guys, my name is Chenika and welcome back to my channel. For the last few weeks I've been making videos about NCLEX and the NCLEX examination. NCLEX is the nursing exam that you have to take in order to become a registered nurse. I recently just wrote my NCLEX last week. It's a topic that's super relevant to me, and it's a topic that I feel like I'm knowledgeable about in terms of like I can try and give my best advice. So today I'm going to be talking about dealing with test anxiety, having self-doubt. So I've been there. I know how that feels to walk into the exam. If you haven't watched my other video, I explained my full experience taking the NCLEX. I'm in Canada, so it was my experience taking it here in Canada in Toronto, and it was a very stressful situation. I had a lot of test anxiety, and I go into detail more about that in my other video, so you can check that one out. And I also made another video about giving tips on how to study. But today I want to just really talk about like dealing with test anxiety and how you do that, and debunk some of the concerns that you might have if you haven't written the NCLEX exam yet and you are going to be writing it in the next few months or in a few weeks, and some things that you might be thinking. And I just kind of want to clarify that. The first thing that I wanted to mention, I have my notes. The biggest thing for me that I was the most concerned about, or the thought that was in my head, was what if I don't pass? What if I don't pass? Like, that was my biggest fear. Like, what if I don't pass on my first try? And the reality is that ask yourself, what is the worst thing that can happen if you don't pass on your first try? The worst thing that can happen is that you have to retake the exam. So in reality, it's really not that scary. It's really not that big of a deal. And I feel like there's a lot of videos on, passing the NCLEX on the first try. So there's so much pressure that you put on yourself to, obviously you would want to. We all hope to pass on our first try. But the reality is not everyone will. And that's okay. And just because you have to take it again a second time or a third time does not make you any less competent or does not make you any less qualified to be a nurse. You just needed an extra try, because sometimes it can just be our test anxiety, our stress in the middle of taking the exam that really gets to us. And that does not necessarily mean that you lack knowledge or you're inferior to another person who passed. Like, right now, like the way how the exam is, like as far as I know, I don't know if there's a cap on the amount of times you can take the exam, but I know a few years ago I was talking to a older nurse, and she told me that before the exam, like before it was called the NCLEX, I can't remember what the other name for the exam was, but back then you had a maximum of 3 chances, and if you did not pass on your third chance, basically you couldn't become an RN. I think you had to become or stay as an RPN or something like that. So the point is that that's removed. There's no limit. I don't think there's a limitation in terms of like there's not a 3 chance limitation anymore. Really take that self-doubt and take that worry and take that question on about if I will pass on my first chance, and take that out of your brain and just throw it in the trash, because if that's not going to do anything positive for you, obviously hope for the best, obviously be positive, study and be prepared, but worst case scenario, you just do it again, and that's how it goes. And there's nothing wrong with that. The other question is, do I have to pass in 75 questions? And this is like a huge thing, because all over YouTube, again, there's so many videos about, oh, I passed in 75 questions. And I don't know if that's I think that is the minimum that you can pass on. But with regards to the amount of questions that you have to complete to be able to pass, like really the amount of questions does not matter, because you can pass at 75 questions, but you can also fail at 75 questions. Like if you're doing really, really bad, you can also fail. Or if you, even at 90 questions, you can still fail at like 90 questions and you can pass at 90 questions. Really, the the exam kind of generates questions and tests you based on like how you're doing, and if you're doing well, it's going to give you more and more questions and gradually get harder. And if you make a mistake, they'll give you more and more questions to really see if you understand that topic. And that doesn't mean that you're going to fail. It just means they're giving you more chances to get the questions right. Don't freak out if you don't pass on 75 questions. Like, don't freak out if you get more than 75 questions. Like, that's unnecessary. I mentioned this before. I passed on 95 questions. The computer just shut off. I didn't really know if I passed or failed at that point, but I just stayed positive. And yeah, honestly, like, I had friends who passed in 75 questions, and I think when I was even studying, I kind of did put a little bit of pressure on myself and was like, oh, I are you gonna pass in 75 questions? Obviously you hope to, because you want to get in and out of the testing room as fast as possible, you know, get the test over and done with. But sometimes that's not always the case. And again, it doesn't make you any less of a nurse or any less of, it just doesn't make you any less capable to be a nurse if you get more questions. So that is really irrelevant. Do not freak out. Also, the concern about having enough time. When I sat down to write my NCLEX, it said 4.5 hours. So 4.5 hours, I think, pretty much is what I had to do the test. That's a long time. That's a lot of time. So I just feel like you shouldn't be concerned about having enough time. They give you enough time, you know. And I just feel like you should take your time, read the questions thoroughly. Don't be concerned about the time. There's enough time for sure. And if you have accommodations, I think they also give you more time, if I'm not mistaken. The other thing is, don't be afraid to take breaks. Again, as I said, it's 4.5 hours. So that's a lot of time. You're more than welcome to take breaks. You can have unscheduled and scheduled breaks. Take a break for 5 minutes, take a break for 10 minutes. Again, the time does not stop, meaning that the time keeps going. And so it does cut into the time. It does cut into the time it takes to answer the questions. Like, the time does not pause, the time keeps going. But realistically, like, I feel like you do have enough time for a break. So just give yourself enough time. If you want to take a break every 40 questions or every, I don't know, after like an hour, just do it, because there's no point of sitting down in the test and your brain is fried and you're not feeling good and you need to use the washroom and you need to just take a breather and you're uncomfortable. Like, there's no point. There's definitely enough time to fit in a break if necessary. I took 2 breaks and I was rushing on my breaks, which is okay. But like, when I look back, it's like I had like 2.5 hours left at the end of my exam. So I could have taken like an even longer break, you know? So just don't be afraid to take your time and just really read all the questions properly and you'll be fine. The last thing is just about dealing with self-doubts. You know how much effort you put into studying for this exam, for preparing for this exam. Only you know. So honestly, I remember being in school, and one thing that a teacher told me that I to this day I will always remember is just try your best. At anything you do, just try your best. Just know that once you walk in and you do your exam and you leave, that was your absolute best that you can do. Even if you didn't study that great for an exam, for example, you just know that you gave it your all within that moment, and that's the best you could have done. And if you just know that, it will relieve some anxiety, because you'll be sure of yourself, that you know that you gave it your all and there was nothing you could do. You know, there's no point of just beating yourself up if you know that, you know what, I walked in there, I gave it my all and I laid it out there, and you know, I really feel like I showed my knowledge, and we'll wait and see for the results. So to me, that's comforting to know that, like, you know what, even though I didn't know if I passed or not, I walked in there and I gave it my all, and that's all I have to say. And I'm not looking back. I'm not having any like regrets. So that's a good mindset to have for sure. When it comes to self-doubt, it's all in our head. It's literally all mental. It's all in our head. Again, if you prepared for the exam, you studied for the exam, you knew you put in the time and effort, you should be fine. Like, I genuinely feel like you should be fine. And even if you have to take it again, it's the same mindset. Just put in the time, put in the effort, and you should be fine. So hopefully this video helps somebody. Hopefully this video was interesting and I debunked some of the the myths or like the the doubts that you're having, questions in your head. So hopefully I address them and you guys can feel a lot more confident and feel more comfortable walking into that exam on that day. If you have any questions, leave them below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you like content like this. All right, thank you. Bye.